as the wheels turn beneath you, chasing future to your past, doubling your vision, falling tears on broken glass. I look out of the window, mirror on my fears, biting light shows no respite.
Hello and welcome to the Jenni Makes Podcast. This is a podcast about making primarily knitting, but with a good sprinkling of other textile crafts along the way. So hi, my name's Jenny. I'm not currently joined by either of my two furry co-hosts today. For anyone who's tuned in before, you know that usually I have one or two cats on my lap, Phoebe and Moose, but the flat is very cold this morning and they are currently happily snuggled up underneath our duvet, so they're giving me a moment's peace, which is actually quite nice. I feel like I'll be able to show objects a bit easier without trying to negotiate the cats. Happy New Year. It feels very late to be saying that. Today I think it's the 19th of January, so it's taken me a little while to record. This is actually my third attempt at trying to sit down and record an episode. I was given a microphone for Christmas to try and up my podcaster game, and at the start of the week I sat down and recorded an episode, and I felt like really in my flow, and yeah, talked a lot about what I finished and then also my plans for 2024, and it was quite a chunky recording. Anyway, when I listened to it back, the sound recording was really odd, and I kind of ummed and ahed about whether I should still upload it, but it was quite irritating to listen to. Like, the pickup was really bad, so it was kind of like you'd hear like the start of a word and not the end of it. So yeah, I think it's going to be back to the drawing board with that one. Then I tried to sit down again yesterday, and the cats were just really on a very persistent mission to be as distracting as possible, so it just didn't pan out yesterday. So I've got a little bit of time this morning. I thought I'd sit down and, third time lucky, try and get an episode out. So yeah, I'm going to kick off with what I'm wearing, which is also a finished object. So this is the Levitate wrap by My Favourite Things Knitwear. I knitted it up in two yarns held together. So the first yarn is sort of a heavy sport / light DK called Auchen from Black Art Yarns. I can't exactly remember the fibre content of this one. Let's see if I've noted it down from an earlier episode. Bear with. It's like a lovely rustic non-superwash yarn, which I've really enjoyed working with. Let me see if I can find it. So it's BFL, Shetland and Gilliatt. So I held that one together with a silk mohair from Onion Yarns, which was sort of a purpley grey, and I feel like it gives the finished garment like this lovely like tonal effect, which I don't really know how well it's picking up, but it's so cosy and fluffy. The weather here in Newcastle, I live in the northeast of England. The weather here in Newcastle has been really cold the last few days, sort of -1, -2, so I've been pretty much living in this, both inside and outside the house. I'll try and show it a little bit better, making the most of not having a cat on my lap so I can actually stand up. So it's a wrap cardigan, and you sort of start at the back neck and kind of increase out from there. I think that was how you did it. Yeah, to make this kind of nice relaxed drop shoulder fit. And that all kind of came together really quickly, but then this is all double knitted, this kind of double knitted neckband, which then sort of goes right around the base of the cardigan. I'm trying to show it there, it's a bit tricky to show. And then you knit kind of two long ties, which then you tie at the front in this bow. So it's a crossover. So I've got a little popper there holding it together there. And then, you just a little bow at the front, which I I really like the detail of it's this garment is very different from anything I've made before. I don't really have anything, I don't think I've got anything that's a V-neck. And I definitely don't have anything with like a bow. I've never done double knitting before, so it was a good project to kind of try out a different shape for me and try out some different techniques. I really like it. It was definitely more of a product over a process knit, because this double knitted band took a really long time and was pretty tedious, I have to say. I had a week of annual leave sort of late November last year, and I think most of my knitting time in that week, which was obviously quite a lot because I was off work, and yeah, like it had quite a kind of, it wasn't a quiet week, but I was on trains and in cars a lot and was able to do a lot of knitting. It probably took all of that time just to do this band. So yeah, it feels a little bit like a labour of love, but I absolutely love it. I think I've probably knit one size too big, possibly. I have really moved towards making things quite oversized for me now. I think I just find them like cozy and more comfortable. I think they fit with my style more, and yeah, I think it's just what I like to wear. But I do think I probably could have maybe knit the one size smaller. This is the third size. I've not actually measured it to see how it compares to the measurements in the pattern, but yeah, it did come up quite big, which is fine. I think the only issues I had with it is knowing where to place the popper. So I'm still not totally convinced I've really got it in the right place. Initially when I sewed the popper on, I sewed it kind of like right where the side seam would be, so like kind of further around than it is. And it just made the cardigan hang really strangely. It didn't like sit properly, and I don't know if that is because there's quite a lot of ease in it. So I repositioned it and kind of moved it a bit more over to the centre. It does kind of hang quite low, and I'm sort of, I got a pack of the like metal press studs, that's what they're called, press studs, so I am kind of toying with the idea of putting one here, because I don't think, I mean, you can kind of see it doesn't like pucker too much, so I don't think it'll be too visible, but I don't know, I might just leave it. It's quite nice, it's like nice and relaxed. I sent a picture to my sister, and she I think she would definitely like one. I think it's my favourite things knitwear is a designer who's quite good at making pieces that maybe look like something you would buy in a shop. So I think they've definitely got that appeal. They feel quite like trendy. I feel like, I don't know, Scandi chic or whatever. But I don't know if I could make another one. It was definitely, I feel it was like very rewarding because I absolutely love the finished product. But I don't know if I could make one to then give away, because it was a lot of knitting. That double, whatever it is, double knitting button band. Oh, what a slog that was. This kind of sat almost completed for a really long time. I'm quite bad at doing that, where I literally will have like half a sleeve left to do and I don't finish it. I always have issues with sleeves as well. So I'd finished one sleeve, and for whatever reason, I decided I didn't want to follow the instructions in the pattern, and I wanted to do just like a narrow ribbed cuff on the sleeve, which I did, and then I didn't like it, and I couldn't understand why I hadn't just followed the directions in the pattern. I think as someone who's been knitting for quite a long time and who likes to modify things, I think sometimes I don't know if I modify for the sake of modifying, I don't know. But anyway, what I liked about this cardigan is actually it's very simple and plain, and like there's not really any texture on it, and I think it just looked really weird when I added the rib on. So I ripped it back and added, it's like a folded cuff, which again, it's not something I've ever done before on a garment. Oh, just wondering if there's a cat scratching at the door. Nope, I think it's just my boyfriend packaging something up. So it's just stocking stitch, knitted on a smaller needle, and then you do a row of purl bumps, and then it's folded, like you do like more stocking stitch, and then it's folded to the inside, and then like you cast it. I think I like cast it off, like picking up like a bump from the inside, and then casting it off with like the last round of stitches, if that makes sense. And I think I really like how it looks. But I also then knit the first sleeve too short, which is a classic thing I do, and then irritatingly I was like, right, well, I'm not going to make the same mistake on the second sleeve. I'll knit the second sleeve the correct length, and then lo and behold, I knit the second sleeve too long. So it was a bit of a faff on at the end. Like, I kept on feeling like I was really close to the finish line, and then another day would go by where I'd spent a good few hours on it and it still wouldn't be finished. But I now have 2 sleeves that are a length I like and that match each other, and I'm very happy with it. Yes, so I think I'm going to get a lot of wear out of it. It's already starting to pill, but I think that is just what happens with like a silk mohair. It's not too bad, and I have worn this like literally every day and like worn it underneath coats and things, and I feel like that really gets it to pill very quickly. But I really like it. It's very cozy, and I'm happy to have this yarn out of my stash because I bought it a good few years ago. It might have been I think it was pre-pandemic, and I don't know, it's such like a luxurious sweater quantity, like with the silk mohair. I felt kind of bad that it was just sat not being used, so it feels really good to have had it out of my stash and into a garment I'm going to get a lot of wear out of, and in a bit of a different style for me, which feels good. Feels good to try new things. So yeah, I think that's everything to say about the Levitate wrap. I would definitely recommend it. It's great pattern. So onto the other things I've been working on. I found kind of over the last month or so, certainly in the run up to Christmas, and then actually since Christmas as well, I feel like I've not really had the bandwidth to like start any new garments, so I don't actually have any garments like actively being worked on, which is quite out of character for me. I've usually got sort of a sock on the go, and then maybe another smaller accessory project, and then I've always got a garment on, but I don't have any at the moment. I've kind of been dipping it in and out of doing like small projects, or sort of picking something up and then not feeling enthusiastic about it and putting it down. So you'll probably see that the rest of the episode is sort of like little kind of scrappy projects and things like that, which I've been working on. So the first thing that I did, I worked on, I think it was between Christmas and New Year I worked on these. Decided that the cats needed jumpers, of course. So I made the first prototype, which was this one. So I made it, this one is out of scraps of rerum natura's Gilliatt yarn, which is a non-superwash merino, which I absolutely love. Leftovers from a sweater that I knit for my boyfriend a couple of years ago. So I started at the neck and then knit in the round, and then worked sections flat, and kind of had this like ribbed section to go like over their chest, and yeah, then joined back in the round, and then yeah, kind of knit a little like section flat. This so they hated this. They absolutely hated it. I will put in, I think I only took pictures of Phoebe wearing it, I think. I'll put in a picture. She looks horrified. It was like she forgot how to walk. It didn't fit her very well. I tried to measure them before I started making it, and it just wasn't working, so I just kind of winged it. And the armholes were too small, so I think they were kind of like not feeling very comfortable for her. And then like the whole body is actually too short as well, so it was like a weird little crop top. So they weren't a fan of that. But I was not deterred, went back to the drawing board and then made a second one, so you can see that it's quite a bit longer and the armholes are a lot bigger, and I think I cast on the same number of stitches for the neck, but then proportionally I included more in this like chest section, which seemed to sit better. And this one, so these two yarns are again the rerum natura Gilliatt, but then the top two are, I think, DK Shetland, so Jamieson's DK Shetland yarn. And this one fit a lot better. I didn't actually take any pictures of them wearing this one, but I mean, Moose did just walk backwards for a little while she was wearing it, but then she seemed to get the hang of it. I just worry that they are cold. They spend a lot of time underneath blankets and duvets at the moment, which is a bit sad because when we first got them in the summer, they were out and about a lot more during the day, and now it just feels like they sleep a lot of the time because it's just cold in the flat. So I was thinking if I could make them jumpers, then maybe they'd be more willing to kind of roam around a little bit. I don't know. I also just really wanted to make jumpers for my cats. So yeah, this is prototype number 2. I need to block it still. I'll probably like put it back on them and see if I want to make any adjustments. I really enjoyed making these, and it's funny, like when you look on Etsy, there's quite a few people who make clothes, particularly for Sphinx cats. There's cats without any hair, and they're so creative. And I don't know, I wouldn't rule out in the future maybe having like a little side business where I knit up cute little jumpers for cats, because they really didn't take too long to make, and the cute factor is high. So I was trying to decide whether I wanted to put like attach like pick up stitches here and add like legs onto them, but I think because I've made these slits, it's strange. You look at a cat and you think you know like the proportions of it and like how big certain things would be, and I really would have thought that these little like arm holes, leg holes, whatever, the front legs would have been bigger, like big enough, but they weren't. And then these look huge, and if you imagine like picking up how big the sleeves would be if I knitted little like sleeves onto it, I don't know if it would look a bit odd, but I toyed with the idea, but I think maybe I'll just leave them as like a slit. I think it's probably more comfortable for them. So yeah, I'm going to block that. I think now that I'm getting it out again, I'm feeling a bit more enthusiastic about it, and I'll try it on them again and see if I can snap any pictures to share. But I'll definitely put some up of the first jacket. But yeah, that was fun. I like making things for them. I made them a little Halloween hat, which they hated, and then I made them also like just a regular hat, which I think they hated even more. I think maybe hats is not the way to go, but maybe a little jumper, they could be encouraged to wear these. So that was my kind of little palette cleanser between Christmas and New Year, when I don't think I actually even finished this yet, but I was just like not feeling very enthusiastic about it because of my sleeve dilemma. And it was nice to use up some scraps in some nice fun colours. So that was that used up a bit of my knitting time towards the end of the year. So there's those. I don't really know where I'm going to go with those. Maybe I kind of want to make up another one. And yeah, I wouldn't rule out making a little Etsy page for them. Seems like it would be fun. So that's that. And then on to my next thing that I've kind of been working on quite obsessively, but then like you wouldn't really be able to tell because I don't really have a lot to show. So I'm sure people have seen on Instagram that it feels like there's quite a trend at the moment for things that look almost like patchwork or quilty. So a few episodes ago I talked about yarn that I'd bought for I think it's called the Heirloom Quilt Cardigan by Katherine Seeberger, I want to say. And I started knitting patches for that, and that was kind of, I don't know if I've got any actually. So it was these, sorry, it's all like the ends are everywhere. These, so like there was kind of patchworky stuff there, and then also, sorry, that's like, Laura Penrose has come out with her, I want to say, was it called the Stella cushion, which again sort of looked very much inspired by the motif that you'd get in quilting, and where it's like lots of triangles kind of arranged together so it looks like a star kind of thing. Anyway, so I've been seeing all of this and I was tempted to buy the pattern, certainly for the Stella cushion, I think that's what it's called. And I was looking at it, and as I was saying before about this cardigan and how sometimes, because I'm someone who's knitted for a long time, I've also like dabbled in design, sometimes I feel like I can't buy a pattern if I think I can figure out just myself how to do it, which, I don't know, when I say that aloud sounds kind of sneaky because obviously I do want to support other designers, and I do very frequently buy other designers' patterns now. I'd say like 80% of what I make is from other people's patterns now. But anyway, just really, I feel like that motif was really stuck in my head. And it was also, I think ever since I've knitted the half and half triangles wrap, I loved how you can, like, how that was constructed. So it was sort of doing short rows, which you then like knitted back down in the other colour and then knit the other triangle. I just thought that was a really interesting construction. I thought I don't know, that had kind of been like percolating away in the back of my brain of like how you could do almost like patchwork effects just using a combination of short rows and picking up stitches and like kind of modular knitting, I suppose, and trying not to cut your yarn and just make it all like really continuous. I think that was really in my brain. So like it feels silly now because I also totally acknowledge that like this motif that I've used is like very similar to Laura Penrose, but then again the motif that she's been inspired by is just like a classic quilting motif. So I sort of took that and then did my own spin on it basically. So I feel like this is a big old ramble of me saying this is what I'm working on. So I'm working on a patchwork blanket. These are created, so you knit the central square first. It's all in garter stitch, and then what I did, where's the best one to show? I think that was where I started. So knit the central square, and then I knit this grey square, and then changed to the orange colour and started to do short rows whilst at the same time picking up a stitch and knitting it together with like the kind of first orange stitch, to kind of incorporate, so it's like joined onto that central square. So short rows, and then using the yarn like from like the grey yarn, like without cutting it, even though I feel like I did cut it here, but I figured out a way of not cutting it, going back and like incorporating all the stitches again using short rows, and just kind of using that technique up here, and basically just working around all four sides of the square, because you can see the direction of the stitches. So I've like knitted up here and then here. So this took loads of figuring out, which felt really silly because I was like, you can just buy a pattern that already exists. But I know that the center cushion is constructed in a different way. I'm not exactly sure how, but I can tell from like the direction of the like the garter bumps that it's done in like a different way from this. And I think when you're knitting, when you're working on something like a patchwork blanket, which is knitted, obviously it's going to take a long time. And I think it's important to have the right balance between kind of a bit of mindless knitting, which is sometimes what you want, and I guess is what I get from the central square, but then also something that's still like just engaging enough to mean that you're not just going to want to knit 3 and then put it away and never knit it again. So that was kind of what made me land upon this technique. Like I really enjoy picking up stitches. I really like using German short rows, and it feels kind of like quite addictive. Like once you've done one side, you're like, you kind of want to do another, and it feels very quick to get each individual triangle done. And I have timed myself, and it takes about 6 hours. I think sort of between 5 to 6 hours to do one patch, and for the size I want to make, I think minimum I probably need to make 30. So that feels a little bit overwhelming when I do the calculations of how long that's going to take. And I am a bit apprehensive about sort of losing steam, because that generally is what happens with me in blankets. I have 2 blankets which I absolutely love, both the crochet. So there's this one behind me, which it didn't take me too long to make, but I feel like that was primarily because it was my not procrastinating because it's crochet, but stitching project when I was writing my dissertation at the end of my 3rd year of my degree a couple of years ago. I think that's probably why I made such a dent in that, because anything was better than doing the dissertation. The other blanket I have, I made about half of the hexagons for it and then put it in a bag, and it literally didn't get out of the bag for about 3 years. And then the pandemic hit, and it was sort of became the perfect project, and so I finished it during the pandemic. So I don't really have a very good track record of getting things done particularly quickly. I definitely get distracted, sidetracked, something more shiny will come along, and then I'll put it all in a bag and forget about it. So I'm a bit worried that I might do that, but I've made four patches so far. So this yarn, obviously just before I showed you the knitted kind of patchwork patches, which was meant to be for the heirloom cardigan. So when I was knitting those patches, the gauge just didn't feel quite right, and I don't know if I've just made a mistake and bought the wrong thickness of yarn, or I don't know quite where I've gone wrong there. I do wonder if I thought that the yarn was thicker. I don't know. Anyway, the fabric just didn't feel very nice. It feels quite like thin, and like it could like rip quite easily. Like there are a lot of floats on the back, and it just felt quite tatty. And also, the more I thought about the finished garment, the more I wondered if I would actually wear it. So I'm trying to be like more mindful and more realistic with myself about what projects I enjoy working on and what I'm actually going to wear. And sometimes I guess that's going to mean that maybe the process isn't that fun, like with this, but if it's going to be a garment that I'm going to be reaching for and that goes with my current wardrobe, and hopefully will go with like a future wardrobe if it's sort of classic enough and is kind of like roomy enough and comfortable enough, then yeah, I suppose I need to like bear that in mind a lot more. So I've decided to unravel those patches and then knit them at a kind of more appropriate gauge to make something that's squishy and cozy and that I think is going to make me really happy, just in a totally different form. So blanket rather than cardigan. And then the background yarn is a yarn which I have shown on the podcast before. When I first started knitting my Bonnie cardigan, it was with the Auchen strand from this cardigan and a strand of this yarn, which is Athena, it's called, and I think it's a Teeswater blend. Again, can't remember. I think it's a Teeswater blend, non-superwash, sort of sport weight yarn from Shear Delight. I got it from Northern Yarn in Lancaster, one of my favourite knitting shops. And yeah, so I'm using that yarn, which then feels good that that's kind of getting out of stash as well. It's the background colour. So I've got this kind of greyish purpley pink with the orange. This one kind of makes me think of chocolate chip for obvious reasons, like mint chocolate chip ice cream. This one, like the triangle, is a bit more subtle. Don't know how I feel about it, but I feel like in combination with the other patches, maybe it works like quite nicely. And then got that one. So 4 down, 26 to go, minimum. I was initially thinking that I would just use the same motif for all of the patches, but now I've started thinking about maybe how I can mix it up a little bit and maybe do some variations on that. Let me see if I've got it. 1 second. So, it's kind of a big messy. There's a total mess in here. Moose got a hold of one of my balls of yarn, so it's like an absolute disaster in here. But let me see. Ooh, sorry, messy. I was thinking about how I could maybe do it so that rather than just having a plain square in the centre of the patch, that maybe I could do like a diamond. So that's what I've started there. It's quite faffy, and obviously adding even more time onto the individual patches, and it's again just that balancing act by making this project as engaging as possible, and whether it's okay, I do 5 patches which this kind of pattern, and then I maybe do 5 which have the diamond in the middle, and then maybe like any other variations, because I think it'll look quite fun. And I don't think I'm going to make it so regimented that it's like a set. When I lay them all out, I think I'll make it quite random as to like where like maybe the diamond centre ones are placed. I don't think I'll have like a set pattern of like, oh, they're always in the corners, or like spaced like three like this and 1 like that, or anything like that. I think it'll be quite random, which, because it's a scrappy blanket, I think that'll make it quite fun. So that's kind of as far as I've got with that one. I mean, this took a little bit of head scratching, and I thought I could just apply sort of the numbers from here, but weirdly I'm finding I'm having to do like an extra row which doesn't really make sense to me, to get the same number of, I don't know, that doesn't make sense. I was about to say it out loud and I was like, that doesn't make sense. I was going to say I've got to do an extra row to get the same number of kind of garter bumps, but garter bumps are the rows, so that doesn't make sense. But I mean, I was also doing it quite late last night whilst trying to watch Traitors, so maybe that was partly why I'm getting confused. So this project is bringing me a lot of joy. The yarns are lovely to work with. It's really fun playing with colour, and it's been really good to take to work with me, actually. I think they've been, it's been a nice kind of palette cleanser. I love knitting garter stitch, and I just think the thought of having this like cosy blanket, oh, I love it so much. I really like the like classic motif. I think it's beautiful. I haven't blocked these yet, so I'm hoping like this, like you can see along the pickup, is a bit like ripply, particularly, I don't know, it kind of looks all right now that I've like laid them flat, but yeah, I'm hoping it'll sort of neaten up a little bit. I figured out a way of making it so that I never have to cut the grey yarn when I'm going around the like circumference of the central square, but I do have to cut the brown yarn. Like I can do like 2 points and then the yarn has to be cut, and I couldn't figure out a way of not doing that. But I think that's not too bad. I think it could be worse. Like the yarn ends definitely could be worse. So yes, that's my current project. I have a tendency of getting really obsessed with projects and then putting them down. So I'm really hoping I can kind of continue on. I mean, four down, 26 to go. Like maybe I'm wondering if I like maybe make a goal of getting like a couple done each week, and then that way by next winter I'll have the blanket. But yeah, it's very fun to work on, and yeah, enjoying it. It's good. So that is it in terms of projects that I'm sort of actively working on, but I thought as I've got a little bit more time this morning, I would maybe talk about my kind of loose plans for 2024. So as I said before, it feels a bit weird that I've not got a garment on the needles, and I don't really feel like a burning desire to cast one on right now, which feels quite out of character, but that's just how it is. But I think I bought 2 sweater quantities sort of in the last 3 months of last year, which I would like to use up. The first I bought actually is this Kinross 4-ply, and the project I bought it for is the, what's it called? Flower Powered Pullover by, her Instagram handle is Degen. I don't know what her name is, but that's what she is on Instagram, her brand. I'll put a picture up. So again, I think this is going to be a product knit rather than a process knit, which is a bit unfortunate because it's intarsia, so I think the process maybe will be quite mentally demanding, particularly as it's a DK, the pattern is written for DK yarn, but I'll be holding 2 strands of 4-ply together, and then because it's intarsia, there'll be lots of like little balls attached to one piece, and I'm worried that the cats will have an absolute field day. I had also seen, I think a couple of months after she released the jumper pattern, she released a cardigan with the same motif, which I considered, I really like the cardigan, and it's knit on a thicker gauge, and I actually had a look yesterday at the gauge that it's knitted up, and I was considering whether I could maybe just get a strand of mohair to hold with the two, but I think because the gauge is really significantly thicker, I worked out that I would need to add like 3 strands of mohair with this, even when it's doubled up. I think it's an Aran, so yeah, that's not going to happen. So I think I'm going to stick with the jumper, and yeah, like I think it'll be a good challenge. I think what I enjoyed about this was trying a different technique. I have done intarsia before, but not for a very long time, and never in a garment, and I just think these colours held together, it'll be really fun and cheerful to work on, and maybe good to engage my brain a little bit, because sometimes it's good to have a mix of mindless projects where you don't have to concentrate on what you're doing, but sometimes it's nice to have something where it keeps your focus a bit more and you've got to pay attention. So because that's a DK jumper, I think that the other project I've got in mind might jump the queue for that. So I also got a sweated quantity of this Studio Donegal. I mean, I'm saying that this is also DK, but it feels it's so lofty that it feels a lot like it'd be a lot thicker, even like with these two strands held together. But maybe that logic needs to go out the window then. But I also kind of have a bit of dilemma with this one. I initially bought this yarn to make the Bonnie cardigan, which I had cast on previously using one of these yarns and then the this yarn which I just mentioned, and the gauge was totally off. So I ripped it out because it felt really, I don't know, the fabric just didn't feel nice at all, and I knew that it just wasn't going to sit right. So I bought this yarn, which I really love the colour. Again, it's quite different for me when I look at what I've got in my wardrobe. I've got a colourwork jumper where there's like the background is a green, but it's such a lovely colour. I'm really, really into this shade. I feel like it's kind of blowing out, but yeah, maybe it looks a bit more realistic here, I think. So yeah, I initially considered the Bonnie cardigan. However, I saw my sister over Christmas and she was wearing a cardigan that I'd knitted for her birthday earlier on in the year. And what's the name of that cardigan? Ooh, sorry, I'll just consult my notes. I know it was a Brooklyn Tweed pattern. The Truss cardigan. So it's a drop shoulder cardigan with like a rib detailing where you kind of almost get like a triangle of rib going. So like you kind of, how do I explain this? But yeah, there's like a panel of rib where you gradually reduce how many stitches are involved in the rib, so it kind of slopes up to the underarm as a triangle on both sides. It's quite a nice detail. And I think that also falls into the camp of garments that look like they could be shop bought. And I don't necessarily have anything against things that look really hand knitted. I really love a lot of my accessories. I love them to look handmade, like my shawls and my socks and things like that. But with some of my jumpers, I think with how my style is now, I quite like them to look quite like clean and finished and not necessarily like screaming that they're hand knitted. I don't know. I'm making it sound like hand knitted things are bad, and that's absolutely not what I'm saying at all, but I guess it's just where my style is at the moment. So I'm trying to decide which one I want to make. I don't know, it's nice to try a different pattern, and there's details on the Bonnie cardigan that I think are just so beautiful, like the bonnet, the what's it called, like bomber kind of style collar, and I think it would knit up pretty quickly. I think it is done kind of all in one, obviously not in the round, but like all in one, whereas I'm pretty sure the Truss cardigan I seamed, but then the seamed garment now I am realising like the structure that gives is quite nice. So I don't know, kind of on the fence. I probably will look at the hashtags of both cardigans again and see what I'm thinking. Yeah. So, but I think that's going to be the first garment project I cast on, because I don't know if I've got the brain space at the moment for intarsia. Yeah, I don't know. But I think I should get this, if nothing else, I should probably get this caked up, because that also sometimes, stupidly, even though it's really not a long job, sometimes feels like a bit of an obstacle to getting something done. So shall we cake this up and maybe do a swatch and then take it from there? Even though I am worried that as soon as I start a garment, my patchwork knitting project will totally go out the window, but we'll see. Yeah, so those are the two garments that I would really like to start making the first half of the year. I've not really got any further than that. I've got a couple of cardigans that have been sat unfinished for literally years, and I pulled them out. I pulled all of my sort of whips and like long long neglected projects sort of this time last year and kind of made in all these good intentions to try and get them finished, and some of them I did, some of them I unravelled and made into other things, some of them I finished, some of them are just exactly in the same state that they were 12 months ago. So maybe at some point I'll talk about those on the podcast and what I'm going to do with them. Yeah, I'm not going to go into it now, but they might make an appearance in terms of things to finish. But actually within my stash I don't have loads of unused sweater quantities. I've got a couple of, I've got 4 balls of Mondeam in 2 different colours, which I had been using to crochet a cardigan, and I've kind of gone off that idea now. It was like a self-drafted kind of checkerboard cardigan, and I just don't know if it's my style anymore. So I've got that, which might become something stripy, but then I've already got a stripy Mondeam jumper, so do I need another one? Don't know. Anyway, that's kind of gone like a ramble. I'm going to put a pin in that and maybe talk about those in a few months' time when I've maybe knitted at least one of these 2 projects which I've talked about. So one other thing I want to talk about is one of my good friends, Katherine, who is Fibre and Sustenance on Instagram. Last year she did this as well, but this year she's doing what's she called it? Make Socks, Mend Socks, I think is sort of the hashtag that she's using, where the idea is that over the course of the year, you either mend or make 12 pairs of socks with the idea of kind of adding to your sock selection, whether it's socks that previously you've not been able to wear because they've got holes, or you're adding new socks to your sock drawer. And I was really enthusiastic about that last year, but I very quickly fell off the bandwagon. I think maybe for the first couple of months I produced a pair of socks, but at the count at the end of the year I actually only managed 5, and I think 2 of those were gifts. So my sock drawer didn't particularly benefit from that challenge, but I'm going to try again. Embarrassingly, 2 pairs are pairs that I talked about this time last year, which are in pretty much the same state that they were this time last year. So I've got this beautiful sock, which the pattern is called the Knapweed Socks, and this is by Katherine, Fibre and Sustenance. The pattern is available on Ravelry, and I test knitted, and I was quite a bad test knitter in that I guess you do only need to make 1 sock, but it would have been nicer to have made a pair. And the yarn I used is Exmoor Sock 4-ply by John Arbon in this beautiful greeny shade called Aggie. Don't know what that's referencing. So I love these socks. I really like the yarn. I think I would get a lot of wear out of them if I could just make myself knit the second one. There's a few things that are holding me back. Again, silly things on the same plane as being put off starting a project because you can't bother to get your ball winder out, kind of thing. So I cast these off too tightly. I need to, and I've also woven in the end, which I did before trying them on, which is really silly. So I need to fix that. And I also can't remember what needle size I use. I always use a 2.75 when I'm knitting socks for me, but I have a feeling that I use a 2.5 or maybe even a 2.25. And that, like, the worry of like knitting a foot, like a whole foot in the wrong size needle, it's like putting me off, which is really silly, all silly things. So I need to get over those tiny little hurdles and get this cast on. You actually knit it inside out. You start from the toe and knit it inside out, so you're not having to do all the purling, and then it's just got this really nice twisted stitch detail, and then this cool bobbles, and then like this loop stitch. Can't exactly remember what it's called, but they're so pretty, and yeah, I think I'll get a lot of wear out of them. So I really want to get these done this year. Very silly to have 1 finished sock which you really like, and then not to make a second for a full 12 months, or even longer actually. I'm pretty sure it was spring, not last year, but the year before that I made those. I made that. Sorry, Katherine. Then this probably is even worse actually. So another single finished sock. This is the Pebbles Pathways sock by Hey Brown Berry. Beautiful pattern. We've got a lovely like cable detail up the kind of length of the sock with garter stitch panel at the front and back. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring myself to knit the second sock, is my honest confession. A few issues with this one again. So I knitted the leg really long to the point where I should have probably had more stitches at the top, because it now feels a bit like a compression sock because it goes so high at my leg, and there's not loads of give in this rib, unfortunately. And what I've realised about myself essentially is I love knitting broken rib socks, and that is the sweet spot that I found to actually get me to finish socks. So if it's a plain stocking stitch sock, then I get bored and I don't finish it. I also don't really like how those fit on me anymore. And equally, if it's a heavily patterned sock, then I don't really find I can get in the flow, and I keep putting it down, and I just don't enjoy the process as much. So I'm seriously considering unravelling this and just knitting one of my kind of basic ribbed socks, which feels really silly because the amount of work that's gone into this, I think it's absolutely beautiful, but I honestly do not think I'm going to be able to bring myself to knit a second one. The yarn is Garter Snowdonia sock. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a crime that I haven't finished these. So I am really considering ripping it out, which feels really silly, but that's where we're at. So that's pair number 2. I've already shown these on the podcast before, but these are a pair of socks for Jack. Again, when I say my classic rib, like classic broken rib, this is what I mean. This is a 2x2 broken rib, which I've now extended down onto the heel flap. I've just like divided to start the heel flap. And this is Zauberball Crazy Sock, I think it's called. And I usually love knitting with these crazy sock balls, or whatever you call them. Just because you don't always know what colour's coming next, and I think like the tones are often really nice. For some reason I'm just not vibing with these colours. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm not finding it particularly exciting. Which I don't know if that's why it's taken me quite a long time to knit this, or if I've just had other more exciting projects to work on. But Jack's not had a pair of socks for quite a long time, so I probably should get on and get that back into the rotation of working on it. Because they do come together really quickly, and they are really good work knitting, kind of staff room knitting when I want something quite mindless. So yes, pair number 3, and then pair number 4. So this yarn is my absolute favourite yarn for socks. I've got two pairs in the Mondeem by Retrosarium, and then I've also got a garment in Mondeem as well. Love Mondeem. So I started knitting a baby cardigan last year. Didn't finish it. Mainly because I realised that I was definitely not going to have enough yarn to finish the cardigan. And I think I also started to see pictures of people who'd knit socks in this yarn and was like, oh, it looks so nice. So I think these are going to be for me. I'm going to unravel this and just do one of my classic broken rib socks for me, which yes, I will love, because I absolutely love this yarn. It is non-superwash, no nylon, just beautifully rustic, hard wearing, great yarn. Love it. Perfect for socks. Absolutely, hands down my favourite yarn for socks for me. I often, when I'm knitting gifts or when I'm knitting for Jack, I feel like I need to knit with a yarn that's superwash or got a bit of nylon in it. But for me, I've never had issues with getting holes in my Mondeem socks. I think I'm quite a tight knitter, so I usually knit my socks on 2.75. But I think my gauge is often really quite tight. I usually knit socks for myself on 68 stitches, and I have quite narrow feet. Again, it's not particularly useful if I'm not giving a stitch per centimetre kind of thing, but I'm imagining that my gauge is tight. So I think that's maybe why I've never got holes. I don't know. But yeah, pair number 4. And then I'm not going to overwhelm myself by kind of making plans for all 12 pairs, and maybe some will kind of fall under the mending category, but those are my plans for 2024 in terms of the socks. Hopefully I can jump on that hashtag, and already Katherine's sharing what other people are doing and what she's been doing, and it's really inspiring to see people knitting up lots of lovely pairs. So yes, hopefully I can get stuck in this year and finish off / unravel some of those socks that are making me feel a little bit sad that they're not out being used and they're just trapped in single sock status, which is sad. So I think that is everything I want to talk about today. My stomach is rumbling. We're having friends around for lunch in, I dread to look at the time, but probably quite soon. So I'm going to sign off. But yes, I hope your year has got off to a good start. I would love to hear what your knitting intentions are for the year, or what projects you've got on the needles. And hopefully I'll be back with you in not too long. So take care, happy knitting, bye!